This episode of It's the End of the World as We Know It and I Feel Fine was made possible by contributions from slaves like you. Thank you very much.
We have to maintain law and order or we might as well be back in the jungles.
Does. The ghetto is a jungle, always has been. Understand, you cannot cage people like animals and not expect them to fight back someday. It has always been an army occupation here, with police badges and uniforms. Huh? You and me, a cop and a social worker, we are keepers of this goddamn zoo.
The streets have to be safe.
Safe for who? You're here to protect property, not lives.
Well, that's what it's all about, isn't it? You worked hard to get what you got, didn't you? And you want to keep it just like I do?
Bullshit. Listen, you think because you got a badge and I got a couple of degrees, that makes a difference? Do you know what white folks call people like you and me in private? Niggas, dogs. Niggas.
It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine.
Good morning, slaves, and welcome to another edition of It's the End of the World as We Know It, and I Feel Fine, the show that believes in showing proper respect for the dead.
Into CNN to bring you some very sad breaking news on the death of U.S. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. He died in his sleep of natural causes overnight.
I am your host, the Stimulator, and I gotta say, me and my submedia.tv slaves have had a fucking hoot sifting through the mountains of hate mail we received from ANCAPs and Bernie Sanders supporters pissed off by our last two shows.
Well, you got egg on my face.
But while it's tempting to take another swipe at a low-hanging fruit, this week there's more pressing matters at hand. Namely, actual motherfucking resistance.
Then I let the Alpine play. I was pumping new shit by NWA. It was gangster at the top of the list. Then I play my own shit. It went something like this.
So, with that in mind, we turn to Hong Kong, where on February 9th, residents of the scrappy working-class neighborhood of Mong Kok decided to ring in the Lunar New Year by getting into a giant fucking street brawl with the motherfucking pigs.
Slow, take off this low. I'll ease my belt and make it go. I'm about to explode. Take off this low. Spin it, bust it up, I want to make it go. Release your wiggle.
Shit kicked off when the Popo moved in to try and clear out illegal vendors, hawking food and assorted nearest trinkets. In the heavy clashes that followed, militants hurled bricks, garbage, and other random debris and beat cops the fuck down with sticks, poles, and motherfucking street signs, injuring nearly 90 of them. Mong Kok was the site of some of the fiercest resistance during last year's Umbrella Revolution, when for 2 months, pro-democracy activists set up occupations and barricaded major streets across the city. The crushing of this movement only increased the palpable animosity many Hong Kong residents feel towards the totalitarian regime in Beijing, and in the year that has followed, tensions have continued to build. Despite being technically ruled by jackbooted commies, Hong Kong is a major artery of global capitalism, with some of the highest levels of inequality found anywhere in the world. The city boasts over 200,000 fucking millionaires, while 20% of its population lives in poverty, and over 50,000 of its residents live in literal fucking cages. As this powder keg of social contradictions develops, hopefully Hong Kong's pros will be able to avoid the lure of right-wing nationalism and begin to join forces with the insurgent workers and peasants kicking shit off in mainland China.
I think this law is a massacre of workers' rights for pensions. People will die and they will never get a pension. That's why there is mass resistance against this policy.
Meanwhile, on February 4th, workers in Greece staged their third general strike in 4 months, with 40,000 peeps taken to the streets to protest looming pension reforms, which have been demanded by the motherfucking vampires of the so-called Troika, and as a precondition to the latest injection of cash into Greece's cash-starved economy. Once the demonstrations reached parliament, anarchists threw down hard, lobbing rocks and Molotov cocktails at Athens' riot pigs, who responded with tear gas and flash grenades, in what has now become an almost ritualistic display of mutual fucking hatred.
I ain't gonna work on maggots farm no more.
never gets old. Anyway, by now the Greek left's love affair with Syriza and his Weasley fuck of a leader Alex Tsipras is long fucking over. Despite this, Tsipras is still trying to play shit off like he's cool on the gang, expressing his support for the strikes being carried out against the very policies that his government has been ramming down peeps' throats. But the Greek people aren't fucking stupid, and they're well aware that they're being fleeced. Syriza's latest capitulation to the country's insatiable creditors comes in the form of a steep hike to taxes and social security contributions, which will have many Greeks ponying up to 3/4 of their wages towards paying off the country's debt. Farmers in Greece have been protesting these reforms for weeks now, blockading major highways and sealing up the country's borders with Turkey and Macedonia. On February 12th, a convoy of pissed-off farmers descended on the streets of Athens and attempted to storm the Ministry of Culture, leading to yet more clashes with the cops. Check the shit out.
Storm cellar, gas mask, worst case scenario. Shallow graves leave behind rock pile burials. Predator drones own the land from the aerial. Good people change and become adversarial.
As the situation continues to get even more fucking dire in Greece, and with no solution to the country's economic clusterfuck in sight, it's a safe fucking bet that the footage of flaming riot cops that the country has become world famous for won't be stopping anytime soon.
Malcolm Garvey, Huey, Marshall Cody with the Uzi, listening to Fela Kuti, I'm Ogun with the machete, especially if it's Delhi, got the Santos for the Hexy to protect me, so respect me, this is heavy, legendary, revolutionary, my wifey, she resurrect me when they thought they had me buried, took me out the cemetery, now it's family over every, cause it's all that's necessary to avoid the commissary, I'ma live for you five, so I stop getting high, if you know then you recognize, it's that black and brown pride, this the power of the mind, RBG, God divine, you can see through the lies if you could read between the lines.
I live, I die, I organize, everything I do revolutionize. I build what's good for the whole damn hood. Study G's like these, really think you should.
Study Malcolm Garvey, Huey, Malcolm Garvey, Huey, study Malcolm Garvey, Huey, Malcolm Garvey, Huey.
In the United States and Canada, February is celebrated as Black History Month, where for 1 month of the year, tens of thousands of white elementary and high school teachers present awkward, obligatory, and kind of fucking racist lessons for their students on historical black figures such as Frederick Douglass and Martin Luther King.
Who invented the air conditioner? A black man.
And then explain how George Washington Carver invented peanut butter.
So Dr. Carver's 2 dinner guests, Edward Skippy Williamson and Frederick Jiff Armstrong, 2 white men, stole George Washington Carver's recipe for peanut butter, copyrighted it, and reaped untold fortunes from it.
Given the tense state of racial dynamics in the post-Ferguson United States, this year's Black History Month has been more political than most. All around the country, black peeps are rising up, reconnecting with past histories of struggle, and publicly challenging the racist status fucking quo. Even the holy grail of American spectacles, the motherfucking Super Bowl, featured a halftime lesson on black history. Compliments of none other than Miss Black Bill Gates in the making herself, Beyonce, who performed alongside dozens of backup dancers dressed in Black Panther regalia.
It was really outrageous that she used it as a platform to attack police officers.
Oh, fuck! Fuck me in the dick!
But while the right-wing corporate media endlessly debates whether Beyonce's performance was racist and the nuanced difference between the Panthers and the KKK, another story is going largely underreported. Climatologists are saying that this past year's El Niño was the strongest on record, and it's having devastating effects on weather patterns across the globe, whereas in Southern California it has led to heavy rains that have replaced the region's long-standing drought with widespread flooding. In Haiti, on the other hand, it has exacerbated an existing drought, leading to widespread crop failures and food shortages, which have put millions of people at risk of starvation.
Every day is getting worse. It is difficult to grow crops because of lack of water. Many are malnourished and they don't have food.
And the scale of the problem is even more fucking dire in southeastern Africa, where El Niño, combined with the pre-existing effects of global climate change, have set the stage for a looming famine of biblical fucking proportions, with up to 14 million people already suffering from food and or water shortages, and some experts predicting that up to 49 million people are ultimately at risk of starvation. Just let those numbers sink in for a second.
Everyone is in hardship. We all have so little to eat because there was no harvest this season.
Scorching hot temperatures combined with an almost complete lack of rainfall has turned large areas of the region into a parched wasteland, decimating agriculture in South Africa, Lesotho, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Zambia, Madagascar, Malawi, and Ethiopia, where upwards of 8.5 million people are facing food shortages and 1 million children are struggling with acute malnutrition. This tragic situation is a bleak fucking reminder of the ways in which white supremacy is interwoven into the very fabric of globalized capitalism. While rich fucking countries in the West throw out an unconscionable amount of perfectly good food every fucking day, large areas of the world are starving to death in front of our very eyes. Capitalism is a man-made fucking disaster, which makes it that much harder for poorer countries to cope with changes in weather patterns, which are going to get worse as climate change continues to do its thing. While the scale and scope of these problems can be hard to wrap one's head around, they are ultimately connected to resistance to white supremacy and capitalism here at home, as they represent the global consequences of these hierarchical systems, projected abroad via imperialism and neo-colonial trade policies. So, to learn more about some of the local struggles against white supremacy here in Canada, and how they're connected to the bigger picture, I recently caught up with Ajamu Nangwaya, an anarchist educator and writer from Toronto, and an organizer with the Network for the Elimination of Police Violence. Hey Ajamu, how the fuck are you?
I'm pretty good, just battling a cold, but I'm getting better.
So, it's February, which means it's Black History Month. In the past, you've been critical of this term, and the way it's framed by the media, government officials, and social justice advocates alike. Why is that?
It's a cultural celebration, and it is not focused on the need for social emancipation. Therefore, it is a time for us to engage in a name change, but beyond the name change is the need to focus on political ideology, political organizing, for us to expose the fact that there's still a need for us to fight against capitalism, racism, homophobia in the present time, and that we haven't achieved emancipation, which history kind of focus on the past and not the present and the future.
You were an early member of the Black Action Defense Committee, or BADC, a Toronto-based organization active in struggles against racist police terror in the 1980s and 1990s. For viewers who might not be familiar with this group or its history, can you give us a quick rundown?
Yes, the Black Action Defense Committee was created in August 1988. It was a response to the killing of an elderly African man with mental health issues. Well, a number of activists came together and said we need an organizational response to this act of police violence, and that led to BADC. And it is in the late 80s and 1990s the most prominent group in Ontario that was pushing for police accountability, that was organizing against police violence.
Up here in Canada, most of the news and analysis that we hear about police brutality comes from the US. How is the operation of white supremacy, as it relates to state violence, different in both countries, and in what ways is it the same?
I would say fundamentally, there's no real difference between police violence in the United States and Canada, because we experience slavery in Canada, and the police as always are the coercive element in society. The police, the military has always worked against African people in the US and also in Canada. So our relationship with the law enforcement as well as the judicial system and the prison system has always been a negative, oppositional one.
On a similar note, many peeps in this country are generally familiar with the history of the civil rights and black liberation movements in the US, and more recent historical examples such as the LA riots of 1992, but are often less familiar with the history of struggles against anti-black racism here at home. How do you think this affects the perspective of revolutionaries here in Canada? And are there specific movements and events that you think peeps here would benefit from learning more about?
The media dominates our perception of reality. And African Americans are living in the center of world imperialism, the United States. So whatever they do gets projected across the world, in Africa, in Latin America. A lot of us end up using African Americans as our reference point. So whatever African Americans do, we tend to pick it up in our own spaces. But we also here in Canada, you know, have a history of struggle and resistance, which is documented, but is not as widely known as in the United States. For example, we know about the LA Rebellion or the Rodney King Rebellion in April, May 1992, but we're not aware of the Yonge Street Rebellion that took place around the same time. A march took place, and it was a solidarity march with what's going on in LA at the time, but it was also a march to protest the police killing of a young African man, you know, during the same time. But we had a rebellion here. It's not as widely known outside of Canada, even inside of Canada.
Over the past couple of years, Black Lives Matter has burst onto the political scene and as a popular rallying cry for racial equality in the United States. There's also an active chapter in Toronto, which has employed tactics similar to their US counterparts, such as highway blockades, to protest police killings. What is your take on Black Lives Matter, and what role do you see them playing as struggles against white supremacy intensify?
Initially, when the movement came out on the scene, I was more openly critical of it. But at the same time, in terms of its ideological direction, its emphasis on more mobilizing people in the street and not necessarily organizing people who live in communities, whether it's working class, highly segregated communities in the US, where we work with people to build their independent organization to struggle. But I'm kind of tempered my critique of the group because a lot of folks who are drawn into it are young people. They're becoming involved in an organized context for the first time. And we have to remember that young people are going to make mistakes.
No doubt you've seen the clips of Beyonce's Super Bowl performance by now. Generally speaking, what are your thoughts on the role that black celebrities can play in helping to frame popular dialogues on race?
To me, it's not so much black celebrity, but to me, it's a role that the African artists and artists in general must play in the struggle for liberation, especially if you're from an oppressed community. You have an obligation to use your work to advance the struggle, to raise questions in the minds of the people. But the thing that's very clear to me is that the artists, in a lot of ways, pick up what's going on around them. So if you notice in the 60s, even people who were doing like pop music, they were reflecting themes of the movement around them. So what we see recently with Lamar are performing about the prison industrial complex, referencing Africa as a place of origin, or Beyonce like exposing young people to the presence of the Black Panther Party, with this year being the 50th anniversary of its founding. These things are happening because there's like a rumbling on the ground, or there's a conscientized section of the African population in the US that are pushing politically, and these people are picking these things up.
Anything else you want to add?
As anarchists, we need to organize with and among the people. Anarchism is the solution to oppression in society, but we have to be among the people. We may even have to approach them in a pragmatic way, that we may not even tell them that anarchism is the solution. But if we're working with the people and we're looking at how do we organize, and you start to propose a program of broad participation, so we can introduce anarchist principles to the people. And then later on, as they become more politically developed, or they come to our meeting, they'll realize that, my God, we've been practicing anarchism for so long, we didn't know that's what we were doing. So I'm just believing that we have to be strategic, tactical in introducing anarchism to the people.
Thanks, Ajamu. And that about it for this edition of It's the End of the World as We Know It, and I feel fine. As it happens with most guests, it breaks my fucking heart to edit the interview down to fit the format. I really recommend that y'all listen to my entire conversation with Ajamu. His insight into movement and power building are super solid. To do so, just visit my fucking website, Stimulator.tv. With that said, building the show over the past 9 fucking years is possible through a lot of hard work, but also through small donations from wage slaves like you. So this week I want to give a big shout out to Laura, Justin, Robin, Guillaume, Ranko, Hansen, Roman, Raul, Max, Steven, Carlis, Blade, Steve, Jonathan, Jan, Jane, Samantha, Andrew, Per, Flynn, Michael, Bear, Leandre, Jesse, Agatha, Inca, Scott, and Daniel. Empanadas. I also want to give a warm welcome to the newest members of the Ta Conspiracy, Sebastian and Anonymous. Stay tuned next time for more news from the global motherfucking resistance. See you next time, suckers.
Just like in the movie, son, you better pack your toolie. Niggas switch be acting fruity, you'll be cracking like they pookie. Rather smoke a doobie than be burning and eluding. Bang, bang, pig shooting, we should blame Rudy Julie. Yanny for the camera, shine a white and nose candy. Let you banging on the system, you a gangster wearing panties.